Well, happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to the Today Show. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis, your host, and my beautiful co-host, Jill Younghusband, is joining me this morning. Good morning, Jill.
Good morning, Laurie. How are you?
I'm doing great. I have a bit of an earache, though. I don't know what happened.
Oh,
I think I laid on that ear or something. But
oh,
anyway,
okay.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
My focus is a little off, but we're good.
Well, we're here. We
We're
showed
here.
up.
That's right. That's right. Show up and shine. That's our
Yeah.
motto. Show up and shine. So, of course, this morning we always focus on our special communities, and so today we're going to talk about some organizations that are available for veterans and some announcements that Jill has to make. And we are expecting a guest, so we may get interrupted, but we'll just keep on going.
All right.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, Jill, how has been your week? Let's just
It's been
catch up.
busy. I've had company from Medicine Hat on the weekend, and then I had guests for dinner from Ottawa. I had
Oh,
a,
nice.
a girlfriend who's also a veteran, and she was in town for business. So I had her and some of her family over for dinner. So it's been really lovely to host. It's been a quiet summer. I haven't had a lot of company. So
Right.
yeah, it's been busy. And
Yeah.
I like having company because it helps me get my stuff together.
Well, it motivates us. It keeps it because I know when I'm having company, I want to make sure the bathrooms are clean and
Yeah.
it motivates that
Hmm.
housekeeping side of things. We
Yes.
spent the afternoon in a campground yesterday. I
Oh,
made food for about 20 people.
it was a beautiful
And
day yesterday too.
yeah, it was nice. And then it rained in the evening though, and I don't know, maybe that's where I got this, but I had a hoodie on, so I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Anyway, here's our esteemed leader, Jay. He must be just popping in for a minute, and Luciano is here. So we'll just bring Jay to the stage here, and Luciano will be with you just in a few minutes. Hi, Jay. Good morning.
You
Are
can
you
hear
talk?
us?
Can you
I
hear
can't
us?
hear you guys.
Oh,
No, I can't hear you.
all right. Okay, Jill. Well, our guest is here, Luciano Nisi, and I'm going to just bring him onto the stage right now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Nice to see
Luciano.
you. Yeah.
Let me set up my
Luciano,
camera.
this is my co-host, veteran Jill Younghusband. And so anyway, she's the researcher and she was just all impressed with
Uh-oh.
you.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
No
Yeah.
impressed. Nothing to be impressed by.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we're going to get to talk about some of that. So how are you doing, Luciano? And how's the weather over in beautiful British Columbia today?
Well, we've got a bit of rain today, so we had a bit of blop of nice weather for a bit, but it's supposed to clear up next week. So I don't know. I feel like we've had a little bit of a damp summer and spring this year. So
Right. Right. What is in your background there, Luciano? What is that?
I just threw that up. Actually, I didn't realize that was going to come up on your feed there.
That's okay.
That's a book I wrote, published back in 2018. And it was just called Untold Stories of a Paramedic, True Stories of Life on the Job. And it's just short stories of calls I did as a paramedic over a period of about 15 years. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, I just wanted to share it with people and stuff because I think a lot of people don't really know. Most of it's actually quite humorous. I mean, there's some of the dark stuff there, but just for action, but most of it's on the humorous side, we'll say. So,
Okay, great. And if people want to get that book, what's the best way to do that?
well, it's actually available globally on various feeds from Amazon to Chapters Indigo to
Okay.
anything. I do have some book copies myself that I autograph and sell through my book site. But other than that, yeah, it's available all over the place.
Untold Stories of a Paramedic. I love it.
I'm going to order it right when we're done
Right.
this call.
Yeah, for sure. Because we love helping people to promote their work and their books and everything. So that's terrific. So where do we want to start with you? Oh my goodness sakes. Well, let's start with the military career. How about that?
Yeah, so that's it's funny about the story of my military because when I was a young child, I used to play. We used to call it play army. We used to go out and pretend we were soldiers and stuff like that, and have toy guns and all this. And I used to read this comic, Sergeant Rock, which was this character that was actually in the Pacific battle with the Japanese and stuff. But anyways, I was just, this as a young child, right? You're just kind of marred by all this stuff, and I never really seriously thought I was going to get in the military, honestly. And what happened was I was doing some volunteer work with 442 Search and Rescue Squadron out of Comox. I was volunteering on a search and rescue team, a ground team, and they needed air spotters to augment their crews during searches because it's too fatiguing for them to continually be spotting for planes. So anyways, I ended up being trained up with them, and over a period of time, I logged about 50 hours in the Labrador helicopter, which is the twin engine one, and then I logged about 25 in their Buffalo fixed wing aircraft. And I have to say, I was hooked. Like that's the job I wanted. So I at that time I was fairly young. I think I was probably 18 years old or something. I'm not sure. And so it took a little while. I didn't join until I was 23, which is actually, at least when I was there, that was kind of, you're old when you're 23 when you're joining the military. Mm-hmm. But SARTech, that job, search and rescue technician, you can't get in there direct entry. No. You have to serve a minimum 4 years in a trade, and then you can remuster. So my closest thing there was a medic, and so because concurrently I wanted to be a street paramedic or that, this kind of just evolved. And so there was an opening in medic, but it's funny, the military sticks it to you at the beginning because at that time you can pick your element, so land, Air Force, or Navy. And being a support trade like a medic, you can go anywhere.
Yes.
The uniform you wear. So I actually, because I didn't know that much about the military, I figured, well, if I go Air Force, then I will be closer to getting SARTech, which is absolutely not true. Mm-hmm. And then they said, well, you got accepted as medic, but you have to go as land, as Army. And I was like, oh. But then later I realized that the uniform in the Army looks much better. We had a fellow in our unit that we used to always call him our bus driver because he had the Air Force uniform. And when you wear an Air Force uniform on a land base, you stick out. Let's just say,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're an Air Force base, you don't. But so anyways, as it turns out, I think I got the better of the three uniforms, I suppose. So. But so then I don't know. I just I got into a field am in Petawawa, Ontario. I joined in 1990 in the summer, in June 19th, I believe it was. And my career path was to become a SARTech. That was my mission. Mm-hmm. And I did everything I could to pad my CV, my military CV, to do that. Took scuba diving, like civilian scuba diving. I took ice diving. I took my parachutist course and got in with the Airborne Battle Group. Everything I could do to, make my resume look better, we'll say. But it didn't work out. The year that I applied after 4 years was the only year in history that they canceled a search and rescue training course. And they only trained 12 SARTechs a year.
It's a very difficult trade to get into, yes. Yeah,
very competitive. I forget where I made it. I made it in the top 15 or something, actually, of that initial selection. And then what happened was, so the canceled, so now we're into year 5. And then when it came to year 6, which is, I had already signed up for, I did 2 3-year contracts. So I was in my second one. I had a bunch of stuff happening back home. My father had died. And then my brother died of a drug overdose. So there was some things going on that I wanted to get back to BC, and they weren't going to post me there out west, right? I wanted to go to Comox or somewhere. And so I ended up actually, after my 6 years, I took my release I didn't re-up. They offered me an IE, which is for 20 years, and I said no. To the surprise of my adjutant, I think it was, because he was really surprised because I had a pretty good service career up till that point. And
Well, looking at your description from LinkedIn, your military service, you were in training for the 6 years,
yeah, pretty much, I guess, different courses. Yeah, I mean, I was a pharmacy storesman for about 8 months at the base hospital, and I was actually I was working directly for this pharmacist, which is a captain, which you don't typically, a private doesn't work for a captain. But that was the environment. But he tried to advance promote me because I was working in a master corporal sergeant position. But that's a whole other political thing. So
Yeah.
I didn't get that. But I did enjoy the challenges. I switched around. My primary unit was 1 airborne evac. We had an airborne section, which for people that don't know about how the airborne was back then, you had the airborne regiment, which was 3 commandos, 1, 2, and 3 commando, and each were the soldiers came from different elements, from the different, like, Royal Canadian Regiment, PPCLI, or the Vandus, and then the airborne battle group basically was the units that supported the regiment if they were deployed. So each unit had a jump section. So that's how it was for me. So when I did my jump course, I automatically wore my white pair of wings. I got to wear a maroon beret. So you were kind of distinct. It was kind of an interesting, sort of brotherhood or whatever to be a part of. Be walking down the sidewalk on the base, and people would, like, step aside for you just because you're wearing a maroon beret and stuff. And I'm like, what's going on? Didn't really realize it was, that type of thing. But
well, it was an elite force. It was, it was our JTF of the day.
It was pretty hardcore. Like, I don't know what the military is like now. I know we still have really units, but I just, from the auspice, I feel like the military softened a lot, and I don't know if that's a good thing, but a lot of the dress regs are softened to the point that I wouldn't want to be in, actually, right now. I don't think.
Yeah, I understand that. I hear you.
The day is set. Join us October 12th, 2024 at Carrigan Arms for our next fundraiser in honor of veterans, the Invictus Games in British Columbia, Canada, and TDC Employment Program enrollment. For more information, email us at info@thedisabilitychannel.ca.
So I don't know what else. I mean, I did one official deployment, I suppose, to Rwanda, Africa in '94. That was just shortly after the genocide, when Romeo Dallaire was kind of leaving.
Oh my goodness! I was going to ask you, did you go on any deployments? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the one I went on. We went on a humanitarian mission. That was Operation Passage, and that was in '94. Basically, it was fairly quickly. We quickly were doing some deployment training and things like that, but it was so unsteady there and unstable that's why it was a little bit of a delay before we got on ground. But we were simply there as a humanitarian mission. So we weren't under the UN. We were under the Canadian military, which, again, indirectly, I found out that worked our favor because they didn't like the UN there. So they had actually more respect for us as a military, even though, they had all these different militaries were in their country. So I think there was probably a little bit, who are you guys? But during that deployment is where I was exposed to something that I found out 15 years later that I would have suffered. And I'm going to call it PTSI, by the way. I'm not going to call it PTSD because I don't like that term. And I can explain and elaborate on that at some point during this if we want. But I was in a situation where we had a remote water purification plant. We purified a lot of water for locals and for our own water. Essentially, there's this unit on a truck that gets dropped on the ground. You put hoses in whatever water. It could be salt water, it could be anything, and it purifies it to 99.999% pure water. And then we would load up water bowsers and or water buffaloes, we call them, and we would transport it back to camp. Well, there was a standoff. There was a bit of a situation. The truck I was supposed to drive or whatever wasn't working. I jumped in with another 2 guys. So there was 3 of us in an ML. Pardon me. And then we drove to the water site. And literally, as soon as we pulled up, I knew something was going on. Where you get those spidey senses where there's something wrong, because there was a group of RPA that were there, probably about 20 of them, I think, give or take, 25 maybe, I'm not sure, 15, 20 of them, kind of milling about. But and I could see, I looked over, and basically at this site there was 2 engineers running the ROPU, which is the water purification. There was 1 medic. That was a remote medic, just to be there in case they needed somebody. And then there was I believe it was 3 we had I believe it was 2 commander with us. 3 airborne defense and security staff were with us on site. And then so I just said to the guy, stop the truck, because what happened was we usually drive the truck down the road and then we turn around. So I said stop the truck, I got to get out, something's going on here. I'm going to adjust my camera a little bit. And I walked over, and one of the medics that was there, one of our female medics, she was freaked out. She was just off it, and nobody really talked to me. These guys were all walking around in a highly switched on defensive position, and I was kind of like, what is going on here? Because usually it was pretty relaxed, people are there, but it wasn't like something had happened. So essentially what happened was I found out the locals had came up to there was sort of a leader there of the local tribe or group, had walked up to the guys in the defense and security staff and said, we want your medic. And so they without reading between the lines too much, essentially what I got from it, they wanted to take her and have their way with her, right? They were going to probably, I would assume, maybe rape her or whatever. We don't know, but so there was a standoff. So you got to understand, there's like 15 or so or more of the local RPA, all armed with AK-47s and what have you. And there's 3 airborne defense and security staff, the medic, and then the 2 engineers. But so the guy said, typical Canadian, right? Like, yeah, well, you're not going to have her, right? And the local commander kind of went, well, we outgun you, so right. So anyways, the standoff happened, and they basically said, well, we'll kill her before you get her, kind of thing. You're not going to get her. So so that dissipated the situation. I think they didn't realize that the level that what our forces were, that we're not intimidated by whatever you have. So literally when we got there, this had just ended. Okay, it had just ended. And then so as soon as I found this out, when I finally got it out of a couple of them, I had to go walk around and talk to these guys and say, what's going on. I said to our medic, I said, you know what, you're out of here. You're going back to camp. I'm taking over your spot, and we're getting you out of here because they want you, so we're getting you out. And of course she declined. She says, no, I'm on duty. I said, well, not anymore. You're not. I said, we got to get you back.
It's putting other troops in jeopardy too.
Yeah. Now, I was also concerned about her going back not under the protection of all of us either. But I told the guys in the truck, I said, we're not loading water. We're getting her out of here now. We got to get her out of here.
Right. So
she reluctantly got in the truck, and they left. And then it was shortly after that, all these other RPA soldiers started showing up. And it was actually the only time I chambered around in my C7, which is, for those I don't know that are watching, it's our standard assault rifle. Looks like an M16. Because our rules of engagement were we weren't allowed to chamber around unless you're under imminent threat. And I just felt something was going on, and I didn't want to waste time chambering around if something went bad.
Right.
And then we repositioned ourselves up on top of the road. We were in a bit of a gully area, so we were on a disadvantage being where we were. So we went up on the road, and within, I don't know if it was half an hour, 45 minutes, but there was easily 150 RPA surrounding our position. And
RPA is the Rwandan?
I think it was a Rwandan Patriotic Army. I try to remember the right term for it. And they And then I remember one of them came up to me and talked to me because I had reslung my weapon the way the airborne did, because typically most people just have it, you have like a hunter on your shoulder.
Mhm.
I reslung it like the local, so it was hanging in front of me, ready to go. And again, I had a round chambered, and the two engineers, though, I don't know what was going on with them. I never figured that out because they never ever picked up their weapons once. And then the local, I remember, walked up to me, and most of them could speak French, English, and Rwandan, right? So that was, or Swahili. I don't know what it was. Anyway, their local language. And I remember him talking to me and saying, because I had we had the Red Crosses on our arms, right, as medics, and he said, why are you carrying a weapon if you're medical, right? And I said, and it was bizarre because everything I said, I felt like it hung in the air because I didn't want to trigger anybody. And I said to him, I said, I have a right to protect myself, and my weapon is for protecting myself and my patients, right? It's not for aggression. And but the tensions were super high, and at one point, I don't know, a shot went off. I don't know if they shot a cow or something. I'm not sure what was going on, but a shot went off, not in our direction necessarily, but and then that standoff happened for, I forget how long, but it seemed like hours. And I was just at a super high level of tension. I mean, my finger was indexed up over top of my trigger, and I was just, it was like, So then finally they sent in reinforcements from the camp, and they talked to the locals, and they sent in, I think, 2 or 3 vehicles, and we went back. Everybody else was relieved, like that was there before they could pull the Woropu out. And just a second, I'm gonna grab a drink of.
Mhm. Yeah, take your time.
So we went back, and it was a kind of surreal experience then, because we were kind of like just reflecting on it, because I honestly thought I was going to die that day. Like, I thought that was it. I was, it was probably the only time ever that I remember in all my careers or military that I was prepared to kill.
Right.
I was very much in belief that I was going to have to, my whole thing was, I was thinking about it going, if the shooting starts, my weapon will be empty by the time I hit the ground. That was kind of my mindset. It was kind of a bizarre place to be, actually.
Right.
And then after I went back to camp, I cleared my weapon at the gate where we had to do it. And I remember people watching me. They're watching me clear my weapon. Everybody knows that you're not supposed to have a round chambered. Not one person questioned me. I was never debriefed. And I found out later that none of the airborne guys were debriefed. The sit rep or whatever was written about that situation, I don't know if there was one written or what happened. I did find out later through a book from my lieutenant, who he wrote a book about his journey to PTSD and back, and Chris Linford. He retired, I think, as a lieutenant commander, and he wrote in his book about that day, and I had to figure it out and decipher it because it came across like an argument between a chicken or something.
Oh.
And I talked to him about it. I said, that's not what happened. Like, that is not what happened. Anyways, fast forward 15 years later, when I ended up getting some assessments done, I found out I had been harboring that incident for 15 years.
Wow.
Basically the surrounding and being on the road and
right.
the whole thing. So
yeah, we're gonna take a little break and get your thoughts together around what I'd love for everyone to know your thoughts on your acronym rather than PTSD. You have another acronym that you prefer. So let's just give you a little break here. And if, by the way, broadcasting tip, when you're on the air or you're doing a podcast or you're having problems with your voice, an apple. So if you have an apple in the house, go grab it during the break, because it's the apple that clears the throat. Apple juice or apple.
I think I do have an apple, actually.
All right. Well, will you go get that and grab a bite? All right.
Okay,
We'll be right.
great.
We'll be right back.
Perfect. Thanks.
Introducing Veteran House Alliance International Monthly 50/50 Raffle. Purchase your ticket today, link on display, and have a chance to win cash and help a great platform supporting veterans. The Disability Channel would like to thank our existing sponsors. We really appreciate the support and kindness from the BIAs across the GTA, Ontario, Canada, and our friends in the USA. We love making new friends. Thank you for supporting our existing employment programs.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis and your host of the Today Show, my beautiful co-host, Jill Younghusband. And Jill and I do our show every Thursday because it's veterans. We do special communities. So our veterans community, our Indigenous community, our disabled community, and feature special guests. And today we have Luciano with us to talk about his experiences. And I'd really mention your book again, Untold Stories of a Paramedic. I think that's an amazing book. And you can get it on Amazon. And Luciano has his own book page, perhaps on Facebook, I guess. So anyway, let's go back. You know, I've worked with jail guards, RCMP, police officers, veterans now, who've all been diagnosed with this disorder. Like it's something, you know, like you can catch it, like it's contagious, perhaps, you know. So I love your thoughts on that. And Jill also served Luciano, in case you didn't know this. She was in the military for 17 years as an admin. And deployed quite a bit, haven't you, Jill? You want to just share a little bit?
Well, I've seen the world. I served with the UN with one service battalion out of Calgary in Namibia in 1989. And it was a logistics support to support the free and fair elections in Namibia. And then I worked with the NATO AWACS in Geilenkirchen, Germany from 93 to 97. So we were monitoring the main focus at that time was the no-fly zone over Bosnia, and we were listening to we were watching what was happening in Rwanda at the time in '94 because it was a hot spot. And I've met some veterans. Sammy Sampson, he's a Rwandan advocate. He has his whole life now is focused on recovering and supporting Rwandan veterans because there are many stories from Rwanda that have not been told. Mm-hmm. And it took, I don't know how many years before they even had a medal for the soldiers who got dropped in to Rwanda in the middle of this conflict. It was wow. Harrowing. And yes.
Well, I think we just heard one of the stories, didn't we?
And it's interesting you mentioned there was no debrief. You know, my late mentor, Peter Keto, he was a corrections officer with Corrections Canada, and he developed trauma debrief. If you had any kind of incident on your shift for a first responder or corrections officer, there was a debrief right at the end of your shift, and he developed a protocol to desensitize or to bring down your nervous system to talk about it. But yeah. You bottle it up. There was no protocol. There was no kind of decompression. Mm-hmm. But now we know so much more about it.
Yeah, I know back in my day there, and it wasn't, it's not that long. Well, I guess it's long ago now, but, it was pretty much soldier on, suck it up, carry on, all that kind of stuff, right? It was very much pushed as that. And I guess what I was surprised about, though, that nobody checked in with me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like it didn't happen. In fact,
I didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm.
I reconnected with some of the. I actually was on this mission to reconnect with some of the guys that were there. And the medic too. I talked to her because I knew her. She was in my unit, so we had a. But. And I don't want to speak about other people's stuff, so I won't do that. But I did reconnect with some of them, and I remember one guy I had talked on the phone about, and he literally was like, "Did that really happen?" and he's still suffering from it, and he's never even received treatment. At least I went and managed to get some treatment, and I think the road coping mechanisms, things like that. But so there's people out there from that, and who knows how many other tours and things they've done that they're not getting treatment. They're it's actually quite tragic because it has an effect, these things, right?
Absolutely.
And that's, I think it's wonderful that you're coming on the show, Luciano, to share this story, because we can fan this out to our fellow veterans and share it out to the different organizations on Facebook and social media to reach out to those who are suffering. There is hope there. We need to reach out. Yeah.
Yeah, even the tour, like it wasn't managed very well, and I think, and I don't want to blame medical command so much, but I think that operation would have been better managed if it was run by an infantry commander, actually.
Oh,
But it wasn't. But it wasn't humanitarian. It was a humanitarian mission, so why would it be? But I could see other people being affected. I mean, we were working a 8 on 8 off schedule, which again already doesn't make sense when you're working a 24-hour operation. So in those 8 hours, you had to sleep, eat, crap, whatever, do all your stuff, do your business. We were on hard rations, whereas in Kigali, there was another operation, a Canadian contingent down there, and they had unlimited access to phones. They had fresh food. We had rations. We had a sat phone call once a week for 5 minutes. We had, I'm not saying we were in rough conditions but I mean, comparingly, we were.
Mm-hmm.
And that was only a 3.5 hour or 4 hour drive away. And yet, and we weren't even welcomed by our own Canadian soldiers when we were there. If we stopped in there or whatever, they basically treated us like we were some other country from somewhere. Like, who are you guys? It was bizarre. It was they were under the UN though. So I don't know if that changed things, but so even our conditions of living and stuff were not the same of, say, another unit that was there, a Canadian unit, And as far as the interesting thing when you talk about medals and stuff, so I've never been much on the whole medal thing. I've never even understood, a lot about it when I was in the military. I was like, what are we getting medals for? Like when I got a medal for Rwanda, I was like, okay, but they issued us a special service medal.
Yes.
Well, to me, I found that a little bit almost offensive actually years later, because the special service medal is typically given to alert, given to here, given to there. It's basically one of those medals that, well, we're not really sure what we should give them for service in their tour. Germany, I think it was. There was a whole list of them. Now we had a humanitarian bar on it, which was unique, and they don't issue those anymore apparently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I would have, if you're going to give me something for a tour in a place like that, and for that tour, I would have wanted something actually from like Rwanda or something
Specific to that.
Yeah, specific to that
Not
mission.
generic.
Yeah, to acknowledge it, because
Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, and no, it gets worse because initially, because we weren't there under another umbrella, this was almost comical, but not. We weren't going to get overseas allowance. We were going to get field pay. That's it. No hazard pay and no overseas allowance.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How things have changed.
Well, they did do it. They figured out, I don't know what they did, but literally that's how much of a failure that part was too. And it's not about money, but at the same time, every other soldier that's deployed is getting it. And, we are in this place.
Yes. Yes.
And, our platoon was called the Angels of Death because we lost someone every night on our shift. Someone died every single night. I had a 7-year-old girl or a 5-year-old girl die in my arms. She was having respiratory problems. I carried her towards my nurse, which was Chris. She died, and whatever. An hour and a half later, I'm digging her grave.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Wow.
Back to work.
People need to hear these stories.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was mass graves too. I don't know if anybody even knows about that. Our medics were tasked to dig up a mass grave and relocate bodies. People don't know about this stuff.
No. Wow.
I was supposed to go and then they just canceled it because someone finally went, this is wrong, right? Like what are you doing? But yeah, there was mass grave, just just off the edge of our camp there. And, you know, I luckily didn't have to do that. But the people that did have to do that, you know, it's just a grisly task.
Yes.
Not.
I know some soldiers from the PPCLI who had to do that in Kosovo. They had to, and they helped the pathologists. The pathologists were prepared mentally, not these young privates with the shovels.
Yeah,
They were messed up when they came back.
And some of the visions too. Even I remember the first thing I saw when I got off the plane in Kigali. Oh, that was another thing they did. They didn't give us our rifles until we actually got to our camp. We went up unarmed all the way up to the camp we did. They wouldn't give us our rifles because they said something about, well, they used the excuse of ammo, and we had our defense and security staff. They said we were on buses actually and some trucks, and I'm just like, I never felt more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so I had my weapon the whole time I was there, and I had to have it with me. But when I was traveling, when we first got there and when we went back, we didn't have them. And they don't understand the psychological effect that has on a soldier when you can't protect yourself. Like that's just not right. It should never happen. But the first thing I remember seeing was a wild dog ran by with a human hand in its mouth.
Oh.
And I was like, where am I? You know?
Wow.
Seems surreal.
And then one other time I remember seeing a vision of a young child was actually holding a human head.
Wow.
It was a nightmare. I
Mhm.
can imagine.
Yeah, and
So-
you know that saying, you cannot unsee what you have seen.
No.
You cannot unsee it. Once you've seen it, that's it. It's
No.
in there forever.
Now, you tipped off the whole why I don't like calling PTSD
Yes.
PTSD.
Yeah, talk
So
about
it first of all, for me to go like and get assessed, the only reason I actually got assessed, and I'll have to thank Chris Linford for that, because we had a conversation. He was living in Victoria at the time. I think he still is actually. But I reconnected with him after reading his book, and I didn't want to read his book at first because it was called, you know, My Journey from PTSD and Back. But because he wrote about Rwanda, there was something that kept me from reading it. I bought it and then I didn't read it for a while. Then I finally read it, the whole book, and then I connected with him and we had a conversation. And after telling him stuff, he said, you know, you need to get assessed because you could be dealing with stuff. And what's interesting is go backwards to 2008. I had an emotional breakdown when I was working at the Coast Guard. I used to work in the Coast Guard as a rescue specialist diver with the hovercraft unit just off YVR. I had an emotional breakdown at work. My doctor sent me in to get assessed by a psychiatrist, an outpatient assessment, which took all of, I think, an hour. And this psychiatrist said, you don't have PTSD because you're not having nightmares. I said, oh, okay, great, perfect. I'm good to go. So go ahead to 2015, and the occupational stress clinic in Vancouver was the one that did the assessment, and it's very thorough. And they came to the conclusion I actually did. So it just shows you as well. It's not just, it depends on the clinician on how you're being assessed, right? But anyway, so the reason the mental health community, you know, my belief, they tagged us, you know, PTSD. Okay, so post-traumatic stress disorder. As soon as you add that disorder in there, you're like, okay, I got this disorder now. I'm walking around with this problem, like schizophrenia or something, right?
Yeah.
And that's what they called it, and that's what they decided to call it, and all this rest. But you see, I have a wound stripe from Rwanda. I was injured. It's an injury. It's a traumatic injury, but it's a psychological traumatic injury. And that's why I don't like the D, because it's not a disorder, it's an injury. So they should be treating it like an injury. Like I lost my arm, no different.
Right.
Right? It's, you know, so there's a lot of stigmatism that attached to that. When I got assessed in 2015 by Veterans Affairs, I was actually on a course already. I was on the VTN program. So the Veterans Transition Network has a program for people with PTSD. I was on the program, even though I hadn't been diagnosed yet. I was in the middle of it when my assessment, my sort of diagnosis officially was recognized, we'll call it. I didn't tell anybody for probably 8 months.
Wow.
Definitely not my family. And even to this day, I don't think most of my family even get it. The only people I could talk to about it would be other vets or clinicians and maybe a course I took, right? Because, I don't know, people hear the term and the words and all this stuff. And
The stigma attached to it.
Yeah, and then the stigmatism even, it carries on in the sense that then you think, oh, well, I'm weak, right?
And unstable,
yeah,
perhaps
I'm
dangerous.
weak, this, I'll be judged, I'll be this, I'll be that. You think of all these things and you're harboring this. And so it actually, in some ways, the diagnosis isn't necessarily a, feather in your hat, that's for sure. It's more of a, it took a while for me to accept it. Probably took me at least 1.5 years to personally accept that.
Right, because you've done all of so many things since your service, and you're I'm just gonna carry
Well,
on.
and then I'm working. I get out of the military and I did some other jobs, various things. I've worked a lot of different careers. I was a sheriff for a while. I worked armored car industry. I did this, that,
Amazing.
but I'm in the Coast Guard, and what are we doing there? Well, we're recovering bodies out of the ocean. We're
Right.
doing calls there. Then I became a paramedic while I was in the Coast Guard. I was working part-time, so now I'm dealing with calls there as well. So I didn't stop getting exposed to this stuff, which
Right.
at the time I didn't realize, but that's what ultimately happened. But even in the ambulance service, there's stigmatism attached. There used to be jokes about it, even though it was accepted finally by WorkSafe BC, and like all these organizations are starting to go, oh, this is a thing. We have to acknowledge this, right? That we got to help these people. So, I ultimately left working as a paramedic because I think it would have been, let me go back. Was it probably 2020, I guess, 2019?
Start of the lockdowns.
It was just after the year before, because COVID started in 19, right?
20 spring. Well, March 20 were the first lockdowns.
Okay, so it would have been then 19. Then I had a call I went to, and somehow this boy died, but he had a genetic condition, but we couldn't resuscitate him. Like, it came over our computer that cardiac arrest, but you can't ventilate the patient. You can't, and I'm like, what are you talking about? What kind of cardiac arrest is this? It's a DNR, but it's not. So, and then the events that happened during that call actually triggered that incident where that young girl died in my arms somehow, and I don't even know how, because
yes,
I had I had kids too, but I'm not even exactly sure how it happened, but it really affected me, and but I took 4 days off, and I talked to my psychologist I had been seeing. I called her, and we talked for like an hour on the phone, an impromptu appointment. We didn't have an appointment, and I thought, okay, I'm good. Well, fast forward a year, whatever later, give or take, and I'm at a call that's got nothing to do with trauma. Actually, it had nothing to do with, it wasn't an overdose, it wasn't whatever, but I was just done. And so I ended up getting I got a medical restriction by WorkSafe. I had to avoid working in traumatic calls, we'll call it.
Yes.
Which, and I could still deal with something right now if it happened. It's not like I can't, but that's sort of what they came up with. But then I didn't, I became a paramedic to be a trauma paramedic, not a transfer paramedic and transfer people to hospitals and stuff. So I actually never, when I finally left, I never went back. And then I retired a year and a half later, I think, officially. So just, resigned. But yeah, so there's a cumulative effect too. But the point of the PTSI is it's an injury. And I think they need to, there's a difference between, I find there's a difference too, and that's just my belief, and I'm not going to get into the clinical definitions, but when someone gets PTSI from doing a job where they're required or they're attending a situation to me, it has a different umbrella than, say, someone that was involved in a plane crash.
Right.
They're both traumatic to the person. They're both could have the same symptoms and signs, but one person's running into the danger.
Exactly.
The other one was
Right.
exposed to the danger by chance. So, and I'm not going to demean any of it for any of the other people because it has a certain
No.
effect on them. But when you have say, first responders or whoever, and you're the one that's going into the fire, right? You're going into that danger because of your job or whatever's happening, and you get exposed to this stuff. To me, I just feel like it has a different auspice over the whole condition because you didn't ask for this. Like, and well, neither did the other people. Okay, so I don't want to demean what's happening to anyone else because anybody that has it has to deal with it. But it's just, anybody that's getting it at work related, it's like they're being exposed to this because that's what they do, but they didn't ask for it, right? It just happened, right? Like
Right.
through the course of their job, whether it's a police officer, firefighter, could be anybody. I don't care, corrections, whatever, any say front line. And other staff, secondary staff. I mean, hospital staff get exposed to it and they get affected as well, right? Emergency nurses and whatever, or anywhere else. Doesn't matter where you work.
Yeah, that's right.
But anyways, that's just sort of my personal view of it, I guess, is that it should be more classified as an injury versus a disability or a disorder. So
I agree with you.
you know,
Because, the minute I always tell my clients, the minute you send your 6-year-old kid to see a psychologist because you can't handle them, you've just given that kid the message that there's something wrong with them. And so most of us are walking around without the trauma, even feeling like there's something wrong with us. So as soon as we're given a label, and this is one of the reasons I left the school system. I left in 1984 when all of a sudden you've got a brilliant kid who's overactive, but now we have to give him Ritalin because he's ADHD. Well, you know what? I left my career on that. I couldn't do it. I said, I am not giving little kids drugs and I'm not putting a label. You deal with that. If they, if I had a kid that couldn't learn how to spell one way, I figured out another way to do it. So as soon as we have labels, that impacts how we feel about ourselves right there.
mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. And Jill and I both know how that impacts our self-worth. We're walking around with very little to start with. So when we have things like that happen, it's huge. And I love your acronym for that.
Mhm.
Injury.
Well, it's not mine. I didn't come up with it, so I can't take credit. I heard about it and I
love
thought about it. And even a recent show, a TV show, was interesting. Navy SEALs that's been on TV, and they're just starting their last season. And I watched it because they did a very good job at it. It was very accurate, I would say, in the sense of a TV show. And I found out because there's some Navy SEALs on the show, but they don't call it PTSI; they just call it PTS. But
Yeah.
the thing is, I've also heard PTSI and other elements too, and I used to sort of juggle with that idea of it. But more in the last couple of years, I've really kind of ingrained in that's a more appropriate term for that type of exposure because it's an
Yes.
injury. That's just
Yeah.
like, and whether people could disagree with me and say, that, whatever, clinicians could say they disagree with me, that's fine. But that's just from a person that's dealing with it.
Yes.
Because I deal with it pretty much every day, even though I have my coping mechanisms, and most of the time it's, everything's great for the most part, right? As much as anybody else. But I get caught sometimes where, I still get nightmares of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
very violent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, very violent
Much.
nightmares. So that's just a reality. And when that happens, I wake up and go, good, that was just a dream, thankfully.
Yes. Right. Right.
So,
Well, I had an officer, RCMP officer, who'd been diagnosed, drove into my resort or my lodge with a gun on the seat of his truck. And he was thinking 5-hour drive, how he was going to take himself out on my watch. And he was taking 2 doses of 18 pills a day. like the meds. And how would you ever feel right, just even with the drug intake, right? So he had all this medication, so he could have overdosed easily. And but anyway, he left 5 days later, and he's fine right now. That was about 6 years ago now.
Wonderful.
Had a wife and 5 little kids, and we just got him past that hump that he was just because that's what I've experienced with my clients who've been diagnosed. They get to a point and then they plateau and they can't get over that hump.
Get stuck.
Get stuck.
It's kind of a, I don't know. There's ebbs and waves, like ups and downs. That's for sure. I mean, I've self-medicated with alcohol before. Never taken any medication though, except for some very mild antidepressants a couple times. But it wasn't technically for my PTSI. But I refused to take anything, and I never saw a psychiatrist for that reason, because I said I'm not. Because the first thing they're going to do is diagnose or give me meds, and I don't want them. So I was like, that's not the solution to this.
That doesn't solve anything. Yeah.
Just mask. And anybody I know that have been on those cocktails too, on courses I've been on or whatever, and I've talked to them, they can't. They either have gotten off them or they're trying to because of the negative effects.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, they have when you're on that stuff and then you go to get off, that's when you have suicide ideation.
Yeah.
A lot of them, that's the side effect.
Yeah, because the titration to get them off takes so long. You don't just stop them. You have to pace it. It takes weeks and weeks for them to get off them now. And it's like, and plus you just, all you have to do is open a CPS and look at the side effects and things. Just about every single one of them says suicidal ideation, like you say, as a side effect. I'm like, what am I taking? Why would I want to take a drug that's going to make me think that? It's already bad.
Yeah, exactly. We have enough on our mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Luciano, I'd love to have you back because I think we need to talk about your book more and have you read some things from your book and share some stories with us. And it's just been very informative. Because I've never been in the military per se. My dad was a World War II veteran. I did a show one time with some women, and all of our dads were World War II vets. And we grew up in that. And then the aftermath of being a child of a veteran was an interesting concept because, my dad came home and alcohol was his go-to. And he never talked about anything. He couldn't share anything. It was all inside. And he had his first flashback when he was 75.
Yeah, I've heard that was especially during the earlier conflicts. That was very common, like, World War II, World War I, Korea, the various conflicts, sort of the really old school military. Nobody talked about it. And maybe if they even talked about it even amongst themselves, right, they would have had that connection, right? Because that's the one thing I noticed on some of the programs that I really enjoyed with the group work was, once I was able to actually open up and share some stuff or talk, that even though their situation was different than mine, whether they were, an Mountie or because typically the course I went on, except for the one with Wounded Warriors, it was only RCMP and military, and then the other ones were any service, right? Wounded Warriors does paramedics, corrections, whatever. But it doesn't matter what situation they had, they get it. They at least they get that sort of like, okay, and you realize, you look and they say something, you go, oh, that happens to you too, eh?
Right.
So it just sort of, that helps, I think, knowing that you're not, in that sense, you're not alone in the way that you're not the only one that's doing this, because you start thinking, going, am I really going nuts? Because you really start questioning it and going, huh.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
But I'd be more than willing to chat about my book or what have you, if you like it another time.
That'd be great.
I just really appreciate taking the opportunity to come on your show, and I watched a few of your episodes, and you do great work, and it's really inspiring how dedicated you are with your program. Because
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was difficult in the beginning because people didn't know what I was talking about. It was like I was talking Chinese, and the whole concept of our own personal self-worth. And our ability to defend ourselves and take care of ourselves properly. And people thought I was talking Chinese, like they didn't get it. And I went, well, I can't find anything that's been written about it or a paper or anything, so I guess I'm going to have to do it myself, which I did. And Jill just recently finished one series, 10 hours. It's called Reclaiming My Self-Worth, and that's a really great experience. And I like to do things and get results. And I had, I like the evidence, right?
Yeah.
Show me the results.
Yeah.
And 95% of my clients, guys, have already been to counseling, taken the drugs, been to therapy, gone to support groups, every single one. But we somebody said, oh, you enjoy helping people peel back the onion, right? I said, no, I'm more like an avocado. I go right for the pit. And we take care of business, and we take care of the heels. Right?
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. So thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. And we'll have you back. Jill, any closing remarks you'd like to share with our audience today? This has been very informative.
Yeah. Luciano, thank you for showing up with your heart and sharing your experience and showing, showing your humanness. And thank you for running to the fire. You've helped society, you've helped Canadians. I have such respect for all you've done and what you're doing now, sharing your story. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Jill. Appreciate that. And don't want to not go without acknowledging your service. So, thanks for your 17 years. That's a good haul.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you both for your service. And we appreciate everybody that, like we said, because storytelling is actually very healing. And so we use a lot of storytelling in the work that we do too, because the more often you get to tell the story, like now when I tell some of my stories about the past, things that happened to me, it's like I'm talking about somebody else, and I'm not emotionally connected to it anymore. So the more often we share our stories, the more healing takes place. And people say time is a great healer. That's the biggest lie in the world.
I would agree with that.
You have time
a long time.
In itself, I think it puts it in stasis. You have to. It has to be worked.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll be back tomorrow for our Fun Friday. I'm not sure what we have planned, but it'll be something, I know. And we do sort of heavy stuff through the week. Monday is self-care, self-improvement. We'd love to have you on that show, Luciano. We'd love to have you on that show because we broadcast 5 days a week. So Monday is self-care, empowerment, confidence building. Tuesday is finance with my co-host, Ramin Modiri. He's got some great stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. He does really interesting things with us around finance. Tuesday, we did all the superstitions around money. It was really great. We went all around the globe and, took every continent and said, okay, these are the money superstitions from China. These are the money. It was really fun because he does a lot of research. And then Wednesday's wellness. Wednesday, you'd fit in there too, Luciano. Gee whiz. You'd fit in all the categories.
Yeah.
And Thursday is veterans, special groups. And then Friday, we do fun stuff. So we do authors, musicians.
Nice.
So you could fit into all 5 categories. So, you may be here more often than you like.
Uh-oh. People get tired of hearing from me.
No, not at all.
I didn't warn you before. I was told as a young child I talk too much. So,
Oh, no, that's a good thing.
Dangerous.
No, that's a very good thing. Okay. Bye, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Same
Thanks,
time.
Dr. Laurie. Thank you,
much.
Luciano.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
"18 and fresh out of school, living his life and trying to be cool. Johnny's world changed with a telegram. Pack your things and don't be slow, for Benin's where you gotta go. We're sending you to Vietnam. Saw things no one should see, all in the name of liberty. Several friends would pass away. Returned home a different man, wondering why he's alive in God's plan. Thought ending it all was the only way. Don't let him be a 22. Gave his body and soul for the red, white, and blue. When his world crashes down, he needs some help to see life through. Don't let him be a 22. Susie was an ex-prom queen. Mommy and Daddy gave her everything, but her eyes were opened on that September day. She watched those silver towers fall, knew she had to heed the call. Marine Corps blues were the way. Got sent to Afghanistan, where an IED took her legs and hands, living a life with many surgeries. Times got hard and bills piled high, disabilities were denied. How can she live with these injuries? Don't let her be a 22. Gave her body and soul for the red, white, and blue. When her world crashes down, she needs some help to see life through. Don't let her be a 22. Men and women who take a stand, protecting our homeland, away from their husbands and wives, fighting their internal fights with long and sleepless nights. They need our help to live better lives. Let us be a 22. We gave our bodies and souls for the red, white, and blue. When our world crashes down, we need some help to see life through. Don't let us be a 22. Don't let us be a 22. Give our bodies and souls for the red, white, and blue. When our world crashes down, we need some help to see life through. Don't let us be a 22. Don't let us be a 22. We gave our bodies and souls for the red, white, and blue.